Our next guest says the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. And just like we close out the apps on our smart device, we need to learn to close the apps in our mind.
Yes, joining us live is Pandit Dasa. He is a mindful expert and international keynote speaker, a former monk, and author of the book Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So let's talk about your background. You know, first of all, mindful expert, a lot of people wonder what that is, but how did you get to that point? You used to be a monk?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, and my parents, after their multi-million-dollar jewelry business collapsed, that led me to a life of introspection. And then I went to India to live in a monastery for a few months. I spent 6 months in India living in a monastery, loved the life, came back to New York City and moved into a monastery in New York. Thought I'd spend maybe 3 or 6 months, ended up spending 15 years living as a monk in New York. And then 8 years ago, I left the monastic life, and I've been speaking in organizations globally on mindfulness and workplace culture.
All right, so take us through the ways to declutter our minds. And your first tip is pressing pause. How do you do that?
So our mind has this really interesting tendency of coming up with worst case scenarios about the future, things that haven't happened yet, but our mind just comes up with worst case scenarios. And we waste a lot of mental and emotional energy worrying about things that are not yet happening. So what we can do is, as soon as we catch ourselves doing that, we can actually press pause. There's a pause button in the mind. We don't realize that there is. We can stop that thought from progressing all the way down the rabbit hole and just stop it and actually just close out the app like you would close out an app on your device. You can actually stop that thought from continuing on and really just dragging us down emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, you can actually go down into a rabbit hole sometimes on things like that. Next, you say to delete negative thoughts that drain us. A little easier said than done.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely easier said than done. Our mind has this tendency to dwell on and replay negative things that have happened to us in our past. Sometimes we can replay things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's hard for us to let go of those negative things, but each time we remember and recall and replay those negative things, our body responds almost the same way as when it first happened. It goes through the same amount of stress and anxiety. And so if you think about it over a lifetime, how much more stress and anxiety are we causing ourselves just by replaying things that have happened in the past? So when we, again, catch ourselves replaying something, we have to ask ourselves, is this doing any good for me? And the answer is probably going to be no. If it's not, then we actually need to just stop that and not let it play itself out. Now, we can learn from the past, we can grow from the past, but dwelling on it and letting us drain us emotionally does us no good. So we can actually, again, press pause, press stop, close out that thought, and come back to the present moment, which is what really matters.
Yeah, I think another way to put that is you got to move on.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
The next is looking for positive qualities in people that you don't get along with.
Yeah, that's a tough one because, again, when someone's hurt us or disappointed us or betrayed us some way, it's really hard to go back and think of something positive about them, especially if it's in the workplace and you're seeing this person almost every single day. And this is a real difficult thing to do, but it has to be done. All good things are a little bit difficult. Either we can choose to leave that person in a negative space in our mind and in a workplace that basically just sort of stifles collaboration and communication. So we need to try hard to think of what they bring to the table, what are some of the good things that they're doing, and what are some of their positive qualities. It's a great and wonderful meditation to think about the positive things other people are doing and the positive qualities they possess. Otherwise, we're just going to be dwelling in the negative. So it is easier said than done, but everything is doable with practice, and the mind can be trained. Just like you train a puppy, the mind can also be trained to think of positive things and move away from the negative.
Thank you so much for these tips. Lots more in your book. You also talk about empathy, communication, and meditation. So Pandit Dasa, thank you so much. Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home is available on Amazon and his website. And you can check that website out. There it is on your screen, panditdasa.com.